right, we'll go ahead and start with our first in-house question.
Yeah, no pontification this time. Jayani, I wanted to ask you a question. We talk about the prior review of the DMF. Does the inspection also come, like, do you guys also ask the inspectors to do a prior inspection for these DMFs which come as prior, and you accept them for prior review?
Yeah, that's a good question, Aloka, but no, because this is outside of the application, so the inspection, the facilities, those actually come with the application when the application is submitted. So this is only the assessment of the chemistry, manufacturing, and control of the drug substance.
So only when the ANDA is submitted that the inspection will come. Is it okay? I have another small question. David, I was wondering, this is kind of a weird area that, in the DMF guidance says in 3.2S2.1, where you name all the facilities, right? And they have said that anything that's involved with the drug substance manufacturing and like release, you should. There are situations where, say, somebody has outsourced an in-process, the raw material and the in-process testing. Now, the raw material we know is not required, but because it's an in-process testing, it's part of manufacturing. Will they have to put that information, you think, in the at least in the 3.2S2.1, where they have the list of all the facilities?
That's a good question, Aloka. Usually the testing facilities that are listed in S1 are S2 deal with the regulatory testing.
Right.
I don't think disqualified. I would say probably not, but
Okay.
Because unless that test is also in a regulatory test further on.
See, that is where the dilemma is, because an in-process test, it's not happening very regularly, but it may be an unusual in-process test, and they are outsourcing it to a lab. I was myself in a dilemma. I thought I'll ask you.
Yeah, it's a good question, and my understanding, it's usually just the regulatory testing facilities that are listed in that section. But definitely provide the data.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So Aloka, is that for in-process?
Yeah.
For API? I think if you don't put it in the 356H, I think it doesn't hurt to put it in the S.2.
That's what I was thinking. I would be very worried to put it in 356H, but S1, S2.1, we could, and then, based on your decision, if it's a critical.
Yeah, certainly put it there. It's not going to
hurt.
It's not going to be detrimental.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. We'll take our next in-house question, please.
Okay. So my question is about the pre-approval inspections, and I know they're always scheduled for during the first review cycle. For foreign facilities, are you still giving advance notice? And does that come at, should they hear by the midpoint of the review cycle, or when should we expect to have that happening?
Unfortunately, that's outside the scope of the presentation, and it's best directed to the people that perform those inspections. It's the now called OPQAI, and they're not represented here today.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for that. We'll go ahead and take an online question at this time.
Okay, first question here is for Dr. Perera. The DMF prior assessment seems to be underutilized by industry. Are the current requirements to qualify for prior assessment too restrictive? And what can industry do to make better use of this pathway?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we're also wondering why the number of submissions or the requests coming into for the prior assessments low. We not really sure, but what we can say is that the GDF4 is coming, if the industry thinks that, there are ways we can, add more categories or relax some of the requirements. I'm not so sure, but I think that's a good time to, bring those into the GDF for negotiations and see whether, we can add more things or timeline changes, anything. Right now, we are actually not sure. That's why we are actually, we continue to, present about these, trying to help the industry. What we think mainly could be that the communication between the applicant and the DMF holders, because the communication has to happen first to see whether, there are applications which follow under those categories. So, reading the guidance and see whether they qualify, that's the first thing. Other than that, actually, honestly, we don't know. Thank you.
Thank you much. Next question is for David Green. It's a bit of a long one, so bear with me, please. Under content and format, FDA guidance mentions requirement to submit legible spectra and chromatograms for reference standards and test samples in 3.2.S.4.3 section. Is it sufficient to include spectra and chromatograms for reference and test samples using analytical method validations only? Does ANDA applicant need to also include spectra and chromatograms of reference standards and test samples used in the testing of ANDA batches? Please don't ask me to repeat.
Yeah, that is a long question. I believe they're asking what spectra should they provide, and not only just for the reference standards are also the standards they use for any test. I would suggest if you have a standard that you've used for a particular test, that you provide all of the characterization data as possible. It makes our review easier, and that includes spectra.
Thank you very much. Next question is for Dr. Yuan.
And we have one in-house, Brenda, if we'd like to switch to in-house.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, of course. If you'd like to go ahead and start with your in-house question.
Curveball question number 3. All of the organizations here are here because we want to meet the requirements that are being set up for us to try to meet. But has there been an assessment of the value of all of these requirements in terms of pharmacokinetics or economics, in terms of the reduced accessibility of usable drugs in the United States? That's a curveball question, but an important one.
Well, thank you for your question. I know it's an important question, but it's kind of out of the scope of what we've discussed specifically in this, our section. Feel free to inquire through the agency, and I'm sure someone can address that for you.
Thank you.
I'm sure someday this is going to be asked by other people.
All right, and we would like to take this in-house question over here first, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentations. One question regarding the completeness assessment for DMFs and the timeline. So for before pass submission for a new API manufacturer, we noticed that it's a shorter timeline than 6 months that it's listed on the FDA website. So is there an average timeline, how long it takes until it's, the completeness assessment is completed and it's listed on the FDA webpage so that we can better schedule our pass submission?
Even though it's out of this scope of this presentation, I can take that because I'm part of the completeness assessment team at FDA. So yeah, we usually say submit the DMF for completeness assessment at least 6 months prior to the application submission because we want the DMF to be complete and available for reference before the application is submitted. So that's why that 6 months timeline. So I think your question is more about what's the timeline we take. So there is a goal date. There's a metric involved with the completeness assessment. So there is a goal date involved with the completeness assessment. So it's 60 days from the date, the later date of either the fee payment date or the DMF submit date. So sometimes the DMF is submitted earlier, but the fee is not paid until, very close. So we have 60 days, but we usually strive to actually finish the completeness assessment usually within 30 days. And I don't know whether you know the metrics. We actually, we're supposed to meet like 90%, but we are like 99%. So we say, what I would like to, say for this is if you are late submitting a DMF and the application is, coming like in the next month, reach out to us, DMF4GD mailbox, and let us know that it's coming. What can you do? We've expedited CAs to help industry all the time. So we won't say like, no, you're late, but we will do our best to meet it and find the DMF complete. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we'll go ahead and take our next online question, then get back to the in-house questions. By all means, if you have a question in-house, please go ahead and line up at the microphones as well.
Thank you. Next question to Dr. Yuan, please. Any suggestion on elemental impurity limits not provided in ICH or USB? And another question is on peptide-related impurities. What should be the approach of identification of impurities between 0.1% and 0.5%, since it can get critical to identify at times?
I'll take the first question related to elemental impurities. So the question is asking about elemental impurities outside the scope of ICH, Q3D, and USP. So for that, I would say the best way to do it is before you submit, you may use the control correspondence or control correspondence, maybe the best way to communicate with the agency and seek the assessment discipline's guidance on that. So for the second question, can you repeat that a little bit?
Certainly. The other question is on peptide-related impurities. What should be the approach of identification of impurities between 0.1% and 0.5%, since it can get critical to identify at times?
Actually, I'm not a subject matter expert for the peptide products, but I think if depending on which peptide product it is, and if it's the peptide products covered by the CMC guidance, you may refer to that guidance. And if the guidance does not address the question, you may also submit control correspondence or pre-NDA meeting requests. And for any other peptide products, you can take the same approach.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we can go to our next in-house question at this time.
Thank you. This is also to the DMF division. I just wanted to ask, David, you talked about the impurities and the deficiencies. And at one point you did talk about literature. And the issue is we are seeing more and more questions these days where people do read, things, you can search something in Google and find it, and they read, and suddenly there is a huge list of impurities saying, have you evaluated this in your or DMF, which actually becomes very difficult. But because, making stats, these are sometimes university papers, so making standards, etc., are extremely difficult. But I was wondering, it's weird that of late we have seen a rise in that. Is there any reason for that?
I think our reviewers have been, instructed to give more guidance or justification for their deficiencies, and especially impurities, and especially if there is an impurity that has been identified from the literature. I would just say that you have every right to use literature back to justify that it isn't, that your synthetic process can't do that and so forth. So it's just trying to give as much information as possible to companies to make the appropriate, so that they control the appropriate impurities for their process.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that you are right, and guilty as charged. I did that in my time too. But the issue is sometimes these drugs are old and well-known drugs, and somebody might have published a general paper, and university research publication sometimes is not always under GMP, never under GMP. It's not always trustworthy. So it would be probably nice if this is looked, if people are using a general paper from JAX or JOC to cite a big list of impurities for a known product, it may be a good idea to have a look.
Thank you for that. We'll go ahead and take our next online question.
Okay, this question is for Andrew. Recently, the FDA review letters include requests for documents supportive of A, food industry quality as per CFR for polymeric manufacturing equipment, and also B, ASTM certified quality for stainless steel manufacturing equipment. Would this be because of PAI observations?
No, it's not. It's an assessment of the manufacturing process, and the concern is the equipment that's being used for the manufacturing process. They're taking a look to make sure that it's certified for its intended use, and that there's no risk of contaminants, or that it's appropriate for the drug manufacturing process. It's not related to the pre-approval inspections.
Thank you very much.
And I think we have time for one more question from online.
Okay, one more. Who's the lucky person? Let's see. Dr. Perera, is Model 2.3.S QoS still required for initial Type 2 DMF submission? Will the missing of this section affect DMF completeness assessment?
Yeah, that's a good question. Even the reviewers sometimes ask me. Actually, it's not required, but it's highly recommended. Having said that, no, not having it in the DMF submission is not going to be, it's not going to make the DMF incomplete. So it's recommended, but not required. Thank you for that question.
Thank you for that answer. That's it.
Okay, I think that will be it for now. We're coming right up on time right now. So at this point, we will take a small break, be about a 20-minute break. So at 2:50, if you will rejoin us back in this room for our last of the sessions for this afternoon, and then we'll close out, but I'll let you guys go. And yeah.